The space station hung quiet above a dying blue world, its halls filled with soft machine sounds and fading lights. At the far end of the adoption center, a small alien girl sat alone on a metal bench. Her legs dangled above the cold floor, swinging slowly. She held a torn piece of paper with her name written in shaky letters, Ilara. The paper was old, folded too many times. On its corner was stamped one word, pending. Every morning she watched families come through the glass doors. Humans, tall reptilian species, and even shimmering energy beings came to adopt children. They passed by her bench without stopping. Some smiled politely. Others didn't look at all. When the door closed each time, the silence came back, thick and heavy. Ilara's big silver eyes stared at the window where she could see ships taking off. Every ship had a family inside, someone laughing, someone holding hands. She whispered softly, maybe next ship, maybe next day. But the days always ended the same. Her alone, the staff locking the doors, and the light above her bench flickering until it dimmed. The caretaker android, a tall metallic figure with glowing blue eyes, walked past her again. Still here, Ilara, it said kindly, though its voice carried no emotion. You should rest. I'm waiting, she whispered. For who? For my human, she said. The android paused. It didn't understand hope, but it nodded anyway. She had heard stories about humans who adopted alien children after wars ended. They said humans were kind. They didn't care about blood or skin or species. They cared about hearts. Ilara believed that. Every night she folded her blanket tight and whispered to the stars, please send me a human. I'll be good. I'll help fix things. Days turned into months. Staff changed. Names were called. Children left with new parents. Only she remained. The other kids called her the station ghost. They said she'd been there forever. She didn't argue. She just smiled sadly and stayed quiet. One cold evening, as the station lights flickered from power shortage, a sound echoed through the hall. Heavy boots, tools clinking, someone muttering. A man entered the waiting area, tall and tired-looking, wearing a grease-stained jacket and carrying a metal toolbox. His eyes were brown but empty, like someone who had lost too much. His name tag read Daniel Cross, ship engineer. He wasn't there to adopt anyone. He was there because the air filter system had broken again. As he crouched beside the control panel, a small voice spoke behind him. You fix things? He turned surprised. The alien girl was standing there, holding her paper close to her chest. Her voice was soft but clear. He said quietly. I fix things. That's my job. She smiled a little. I can help, he chuckled. You? You know how to fix a plasma valve? She nodded, though she didn't. I can hold tools. For the first time in months, Daniel smiled. A real one. All right then, helper. Pass me that wrench. She did. Her hands were small, skin glowing faintly in the dim light. Together they worked in silence, her watching every move carefully. When the system beeped back to life, the air smelled cleaner, the light steadier. Daniel wiped his hands and looked at her. You did good, kid. Her silver eyes lit up. Can I come help again tomorrow? He frowned slightly. You don't have a family? She shook her head. No one signed my papers. They say humans don't adopt my kind. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest. He didn't answer. He just packed his tools and stood to leave. But before he reached the door, she called out softly, Thank you for talking to me. He turned. That one line hit him harder than he expected. He saw himself years ago when his own daughter used to wait by the window, asking when he'd come home from work. She never got the chance to grow up, lost to sickness when he was on a mission off-world. Since then, he had stopped visiting places like this. Too many memories. Too much pain. Now looking at this alien child, small, lonely, trying to be brave, he felt something stir inside. He walked back and handed her a small wrench. Keep it, he said. You earned it. She looked at it like it was treasure. Thank you. Mr. Human, he smiled weakly. Daniel, my name's Daniel. She repeated it carefully, like learning a sacred word. Dummy Neil. The caretaker android entered again. Sir, visiting hours are over. Daniel nodded and turned to leave. But as the door closed, he glanced back one more time. The little alien girl was still there, sitting on her metal bench, clutching the wrench to her chest, watching him go, with hope in her silver eyes. That night, as Daniel walked back through the silent docking bay, he couldn't stop hearing her small voice echoing in his mind. I can help fix things too. He didn't know why, but somehow he felt like something inside him had just been repaired too. Daniel couldn't sleep that night. The hum of the engines outside his small room on the space station echoed like a heartbeat, slow and heavy. He kept thinking about the alien girl's eyes, silver, calm, too old for someone so young. Her words played again and again in his head. I can help fix things too. By morning he told himself it didn't matter. He was just tired, that's all. He had a long list of machines to repair, oxygen valves to test, wires to check. He was a worker, not a hero. Yet somehow his feet didn't move toward the docking bay that day. Instead, he found himself walking back to the adoption center. The glass doors opened with a soft hiss. The smell of cleaning chemicals and metal filled the air. Children laughed somewhere down the hall, small, quick laughs that stopped when they saw him. He wasn't the kind of man who looked like a visitor. His jacket was stained, his beard uneven, and his hands rough. At the same metal bench, she sat again. Same spot, same folded paper in her hands. When she saw him, her whole face changed, eyes bright, mouth open in disbelief. You came back, she said softly. Daniel scratched the back of his neck. Yeah, I had nothing better to fix. She giggled, a sound so small it almost didn't reach his ears. Maybe I'm broken too, she said. You can fix me. He didn't know how to answer that. His throat tightened. Maybe, he whispered. The caretaker android noticed him and rolled closer. Its digital eyes flickered blue. Sir, are you looking for a child? No, Daniel said quickly. I just wanted to check the air filter again. The android tilted its head. You checked it yesterday. He sighed. Yeah, guess I like clean air. The android blinked, processing his tone. Then it turned away, quietly letting him stay. He sat beside the girl. For a while, neither spoke. The hum of the lights filled the silence. On the wall behind them, a board displayed files, names of children waiting for families. The girl's file glowed faintly. Ilara, age, unknown. Species Cathari, status pending adoption. She followed his eyes. They say my file's cursed, she said in a whisper. Every time someone signs, the system crashes. No one wants to try again. Daniel frowned. That's just a glitch. Machines don't have curses, but people believe them, she said. And they stopped trying. He looked at her paper, old and wrinkled, still waiting for a name beside hers. You've been waiting long? 4 years, she said softly. That's a lot of ships. His chest ached. And you still wait? She nodded. Maybe my human is just lost. Daniel looked away. Something inside him cracked. He thought of the photo still sitting in his jacket pocket. His daughter smiling in the old sunlight of Earth. He had carried that photo everywhere but never looked at it anymore. He took it out now, the edges worn and faded. The girl leaned closer, curious. Who's that? My daughter, he said quietly. She's gone. Ilara's eyes softened. Did someone take her? He shook his head. No, the universe did. She was quiet for a long moment, then said, Maybe she's watching you fix things. Daniel blinked fast. He hadn't cried in years, but his eyes burned now. The android returned carrying a tray of nutrient bars. Ilara, time for lunch. She didn't move. She was staring at the file again. The android placed the tray down and turned to Daniel. Sir, she's one of the oldest unadopted cases here. No one ever completes her forms. Why not? Her species was once in conflict with humans. Many still remember. Daniel clenched his jaw. That's stupid. She's just a kid. The android lowered its voice. Systems don't judge. People do. Daniel looked at the form again. The lines were simple. Name, home, signature. Just ink, just paper. But the air around it felt heavy, like it carried the weight of a galaxy's fear. His hand twitched. For a second he imagined signing it. Then he pulled back. It's not my place, he muttered. He stood to leave. Ilara's voice stopped him. Will you come tomorrow? He didn't answer. He walked toward the door, trying not to look back. But just before it closed, he heard her whisper, Please, Daniel. That single word froze him. Hearing his name from her voice, it felt like someone reached into his chest and squeezed his heart. He turned slowly. She was still sitting there holding the paper toward him, eyes wide and shining. "Just hold it," she said. "Maybe it will stop waiting." He walked back, took the file from her tiny hands, and looked down at the empty signature line. The ink pen beside it glowed faintly in the dim light. For a long second, he didn't move. Then, without meaning to, he pressed the pen to the paper. Before the first stroke was made, a sharp sound cut through the air. Alarm triggered fire in Sector 7. The walls flashed red. The caretaker shouted orders. Children screamed. Ilara's eyes widened in fear. The station trembled and Daniel grabbed her hand. The paper fluttered to the ground, unsigned, waiting still. As smoke filled the hall, Daniel whispered, "We'll come back for it." He didn't know then that the paper would wait no more, because after this day, everything was about to change. The calm hum of the space station turned into chaos in seconds. Sirens screamed across the halls, red lights flashing like warning hearts. Smoke began to spill through the vents, thick and choking. Children ran, caretakers shouted, and alarms blared in every language the system knew. Daniel grabbed Ilara's small hand tightly. "Come on, kid," he yelled, pulling her away from the rising flames. The corridor behind them glowed orange, and the floor vibrated under their feet. The oxygen alarms beeped like dying birds. Ilara looked back, her silver eyes filled with panic. "The papers. You said we'll come back for it." Daniel coughed through the smoke, dragging her forward. "Not now. We live first, sign later." The fire suppression drones flew overhead, spraying white mist, but it was too late. The lower reactor bay had exploded. Heat rolled through the walls like a living beast. Sparks rained down from the ceiling. Daniel covered Ilara with his arm as a support beam fell just inches away. He could hear the robotic caretaker calling through the static, "All residents to emergency pods." Sector 7 compromised. "Repeat, compromised." Daniel cursed under his breath. The nearest pod bay was on the other side of the maintenance wing, half the station away. "We need a shortcut," he shouted. Ilara pulled at his sleeve. "This way," she cried, pointing toward a narrow service hatch half hidden behind a cargo crate. "I used to hide there when the others laughed at me." Daniel didn't hesitate. He opened the hatch and climbed inside, the narrow tunnel squeezing around them. The air was hot, filled with the smell of burning metal. "Keep low," he said, voice rough. "And don't stop." They crawled through the dark tunnel, the light from behind them fading as the fire chased the oxygen. The sound of the station cracking echoed like thunder. Ilara's breathing was fast, shaky. "Are we gonna die?" she whispered. "Not today," Daniel said, forcing a smile she couldn't see. They reached a cross-section where the tunnel split into two paths. Daniel checked the map panel, but the display flickered and went black. "System's dead," he muttered. "We'll have to guess." Ilara placed her hand on the metal wall, feeling the vibration. "This way," she said, pointing left. He frowned. "You sure?" She nodded. "The air's moving that way." He trusted her instinct. They crawled again, faster now as the heat behind them grew worse. Finally, the tunnel opened into a maintenance bay, dark, full of old cargo and humming machines. Daniel dropped down first, then lifted Ilara out. She looked around in wonder. "I used to come here when I was scared," she said. "It's quiet," he smiled faintly. "Good choice, kid. Might have just saved us both." The emergency speakers crackled overhead. "Evacuation incomplete. Reactor meltdown in 5 minutes." Daniel swore under his breath. "We need to get to the pods." "You know another way?" Ilara thought for a moment, then pointed toward an old freight lift at the back. "That one goes near the docks. But it's broken." Daniel grinned. "Then it's lucky we brought a mechanic." He rushed to the control panel, sparks still jumping from the circuits. "Hold that lever," he said. Ilara obeyed, her small hands trembling. Daniel pulled open the back panel, rewired the fuses, and bypassed the power relay. The lift jerked once, twice, then came alive with a deep rumble. "Ha!" he shouted. "Told you I fix things." Ilara smiled weakly. "You fix me too," he didn't reply. The lift doors opened and they stepped inside. As it rose, Daniel watched the burning decks through the metal grate, the fire eating everything below. He held Ilara close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Then, without warning, the lift stopped. A blast shook the whole station. The lights flickered. "Power's out again," Daniel muttered. He forced the doors open and looked out. The platform had stopped halfway between two decks. Below them, fire, Above them escape. Ilara, climb up. I'll push you. She hesitated, staring at the gap. It's too high. You can do it. I'll be right behind you. She nodded, swallowing her fear. He lifted her up. She grabbed the ledge, struggled, and then pulled herself over. When she reached the top, she turned back and held out her hand. Come on! Daniel jumped, grabbing her arm. Together they climbed onto the upper deck. Behind them, the lift fell, crashing into the fire below. They stumbled into the docking corridor where emergency lights blinked faintly. The air was hot but breathable. Ahead, the escape pods waited, doors open, systems humming. Go, Daniel shouted. Get inside! But she didn't move. She turned to him with trembling hands, holding the small wrench he had given her days ago. You said we'd sign later, she said. Will you still sign after we escape? Daniel looked at her, the chaos reflected in her eyes. Smoke, fear, and hope all mixed together. Yeah, kid, he said, voice breaking. We'll sign. I promise. He pushed her into the pod gently. Buckle in tight. What about you? She asked. I'll launch it from here. No! She cried, grabbing his arm. You'll die! He smiled softly. Someone's got to push the button. Before she could argue, he closed the pod door. Through the glass, she saw him give a small salute, the kind soldiers give when goodbye means forever. Her hand pressed against the glass as tears rolled down her cheeks. He slammed the release. The pod shot out into space, flames bursting behind it as the station began to tear apart. Inside, Ilara screamed his name. Daniel! But the sound was lost in the roar of engines. As the pod drifted away, the burning station became a red star behind her. She clutched the wrench tight, whispering through tears, You promised. And somewhere in the wreckage, amid smoke and fire, Daniel still stood, coughing, burned but alive, staring after the pod and whispering back, I'll keep it, kid. I'll keep it. The next morning's sunrise touched a broken world. The rescue ships hovered near the wreckage of the destroyed space station, pulling survivors from the drifting pods. Smoke and light mixed in the air, painting everything gray. Inside one of those small pods, Ilara sat silent, holding the old wrench in her hands. Her eyes stared through the glass window, searching the stars for one face. Daniel's. When the hatch opened, she blinked against the harsh light. A medical drone scanned her. Survivor identified Kathuri child. Human guardian not detected, she whispered softly. He's still there. He promised. The drone didn't answer. Machines didn't understand promises. A human officer wearing a clean white uniform stepped forward. Take her to the refugee ship, he ordered. We'll sort her file later. Hours later, in the recovery bay, chaos buzzed around. Injured passengers, officers yelling, machines beeping. Ilara sat alone again, knees pulled to her chest, the wrench clutched tight. When the door hissed open, she looked up and gasped. Daniel limped in, wrapped in burns and bandages, leaning on a metal cane. Hey, kid, he croaked, voice rough. She ran to him, hugging his leg tightly. You came back. He smiled weakly. Told you I'd keep my promise. Doctors tried to take him away for more treatment, but he waved them off. Later, he said, I've got something to finish. He sat down beside Ilara, the faint hum of the ship vibrating beneath them. You okay? She nodded. You're hurt, he grinned. I've been worse. Once I welded a ship engine while it was still hot. This? Just a bad tan. But deep down, Daniel knew the truth. The radiation exposure from the blast was already spreading. He felt it burning under his skin, slow and invisible. Still, he didn't care. Right now, all that mattered was the little alien girl beside him, holding his wrench like it was her heart. That night, an official meeting was held aboard the rescue vessel. The human command wanted answers. Daniel stood before a group of officers, tall, sharp-faced men in dark uniforms. You endangered your life for an alien child, one of them said coldly. Why? Daniel's jaw tightened. Because she needed help. She's not human, the man said. You had no responsibility. Daniel looked at them all, voice quiet but firm. That's where you're wrong. They exchanged glances. One officer spoke again. Do you realize what you've done? The Cathari were enemies during the Outer Rim conflict. Taking one under your care is not only against regulation, it's a political violation. Daniel didn't flinch. Then write me up. When they dismissed him, Ilara was waiting outside the room. She had heard some of it, enough to know what it meant. They don't want me to stay with you. she said softly. He knelt down, ignoring the pain in his side. Let them talk. I don't care what they say. But the paper, she whispered. It's gone. He smiled sadly. Then we'll find another one. The next morning, an official courier brought him a new form. Blank, clean, and cold. The officer handed it to Daniel with a glare. If you insist on keeping her, you'll have to sign this request. It'll be reviewed and likely rejected. You're wasting your time. Daniel took the pen anyway. I'll take my chances. He turned to Alara, who stood by the window, watching stars drift like slow rain. You ready, kid? She nodded, though tears shone in her eyes. If I get denied again, will you still come visit? Daniel laughed softly. You're stuck with me now, no matter what they say. As he signed the first line, the system beeped. Not an error, but a warning. The officer frowned. Human Ketheri adoption is restricted under Article 9. You'll need a high-ranking sponsor. Daniel looked up. Then find me one. That's impossible, the officer snapped. No one will risk their career for an alien child. Daniel leaned forward. Then I'll risk mine. For hours, the arguments went on. Rules, borders, politics. Every word felt like a wall between them. Alara watched silently, her small hands shaking. When Daniel came out, he looked tired but determined. They said no? She asked. He nodded. For now, her voice broke. So I can't stay with you? He placed his hand on her shoulder. We don't need permission to be family, Alara. That night, Daniel sat alone in his cabin. The papers lay on the table unsigned, waiting, just like before. Outside the window, the planet below glowed faintly blue and the stars whispered quiet stories. He thought of his daughter again, of promises broken by time and war. Then he looked at Alara's sleeping form, her small face peaceful for the first time in years. He knew what he had to do. He opened the form again, pen hovering over the line. They'll never approve it, he muttered. But the thought of losing her, of her being sent back to a cold bench in another station, made his hands tremble. He whispered softly, some rules aren't worth obeying. And as the stars burned silently outside, Daniel picked up the pen and began to write. His signature flowed across the paper, bold, human, defiant. The system blinked red. Unauthorized action detected, but Daniel didn't stop. He finished the line, set the pen down, and whispered, Now you're not waiting anymore, kid. Behind him. Alarms started to sound again, but this time, he didn't care. The alarm lights flashed crimson across the walls as Daniel stared at the glowing paper on the console. His name had just been written, signed in dark ink that glowed faintly gold under the station light. For a long second, he couldn't breathe. The air itself seemed to hold its breath with him. The adoption system had scanned the signature, recognized it, and rejected it. Unauthorized human signature detected. The robotic voice repeated again and again, echoing through the small cabin. Daniel's hand shook slightly as he whispered, Too late to undo it now. He reached for the console to shut the alarm off, but it was already too loud. Doors outside hissed open and heavy footsteps echoed in the hall. Inside the room, Alara woke up from her cot, eyes wide and confused. Daniel, what's happening? He turned to her, forcing a calm smile. Just a small problem, kid. Nothing we can't fix. But she could see it in his eyes. Fear, guilt, determination all mixed together. The door slid open and 2 security officers stepped inside. Daniel Cross, one said sharply. You violated interspecies adoption protocol. Step away from the console. Daniel raised his hands slowly. Relax, I was just finishing some paperwork. The second officer pointed at the glowing file on the screen. That's not paperwork. That's a criminal offense under Article 9. Alara stepped forward, voice trembling. He didn't do anything wrong. He just wants— Quiet, one officer snapped. You're property of the refugee office until your status is cleared. Something in Daniel broke at those words. Property. She wasn't an object. She was a child. He moved before thinking. His hand slammed the control panel, sending the system into emergency mode. The lights flickered and the door slammed shut, locking them all inside. Daniel looked at Alara. Run! But go, he barked. Maintenance ducts. Same as before. She hesitated only a second before darting through the side hatch. One officer lunged after her, but Daniel intercepted, tackling him to the floor. The sound of metal clanged as they fought. The second officer grabbed a stun baton and swung. Sparks flew as Daniel blocked it with his metal brace. The blow sent pain shooting through his arm, but he pushed back hard, gritting his teeth. The first officer shouted, "He's resisting! We need backup!" Daniel grabbed the glowing paper from the desk and shoved it inside his jacket. "No one's taking her," he growled. He burst through the hatch and slid into the dark tunnel. The sirens screamed louder now, spreading through the whole rescue ship. Unauthorized adoption detected. Breach of human interstellar code. Crawling through the narrow space, Daniel's breath came fast and uneven. He could hear Ilara ahead, her soft whimpers echoing through the metal walls. "Keep going, kid," he called. "Don't stop." They emerged into the cargo bay, a wide, echoing space filled with old crates and mechanical noise. Red warning lights flickered over the floor. Daniel pulled her close, breathing hard. "We have to get out before they seal the ship." "Where will we go?" she asked, voice shaking. "Anywhere that's not here." He scanned the room and spotted a small maintenance shuttle docked at the far end, half disassembled, old, but maybe still working. He smiled grimly. "Guess it's time to see if the old mechanic still remembers his job." They ran across the bay. Overhead, an automated voice kept repeating, "Security breach in cargo section. Lockdown in progress." Daniel jumped into the shuttle cockpit, pressing buttons, flipping switches. Come on, come on." The old ship coughed, lights flickering, then finally roared to life. Ilara sat beside him, eyes wide. "Can this really fly?" "Barely," he said, grinning. "But it doesn't need to fly far. Just far enough to find freedom." As the docking clamps released, the cargo bay door opened halfway, then froze. The system had detected their movement. Soldiers rushed into the bay, shouting. Laser sights flickered against the shuttle's hull. Daniel looked at Ilara. "Hold on tight. Are we going to die?" she whispered. "Not before we live first," he said, and slammed the thrusters. The small shuttle shot forward, scraping against the half-open door. Sparks exploded as metal tore, but they made it through, tumbling into open space. Behind them, alarms and voices faded into the distance. Inside, silence filled the small cockpit except for the steady hum of the engine. Stars spread out before them like endless lanterns. Daniel leaned back, panting, his hand still gripping the controls. Ilara looked at him, tears in her eyes. "You really did it," she whispered. "You signed for me." He smiled softly. "Guess that makes it official. You're stuck with me now, kid." Her face broke into a trembling smile. "Then you're really my dad?" Daniel turned his head toward her. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I think I always was." For a while they floated in silence, the ship drifting through the starlit void. Ilara pressed her forehead against the glass, watching the stars go by.
"Where will we go?"
"Someplace new," he said. "Someplace where no one cares about rules, like only hearts." The onboard system beeped faintly. "Warning, low fuel. Destination unreachable," Daniel laughed softly. "Figures." He looked at the glowing paper still inside his jacket. It shimmered faintly, reacting to his signature. As if alive, it projected a small holographic line of text in alien script. Ilara leaned closer, reading it aloud. It says, "Bond confirmed." Daniel's throat tightened. He smiled faintly, whispering, "Then we're already home." But far behind them, the human authorities weren't giving up. Red dots on the radar began to appear, patrol drones closing in fast. Daniel straightened, eyes narrowing. Looks like the family reunion's gonna get noisy. He powered up the engines again, knowing the chase was coming. Yet in that moment, with Ilara beside him, he felt something stronger than fear, something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. And as the little ship vanished into the black, the bond between a human and an alien, sealed by ink, fire, and defiance, began to change the galaxy forever. The stars drifted like cold dust around their small, battered shuttle. Days blurred into nights and silence became their companion. Daniel had managed to reroute the fuel lines just enough to keep the engines running. Every few hours he checked the scanners, making sure no patrol ships were nearby. The galaxy was vast, but not vast enough to hide forever. Inside the shuttle, the hum of the life support system was soft, almost comforting. Ilara sat near the viewport, her face glowing faintly in the dim light. She hummed a tune she had learned from Daniel, a simple earth song about home. Her silver eyes followed the stars as if she could find safety among them. Daniel watched her quietly. She was growing stronger, eating better, smiling more. It was strange how quickly she adapted, how easily she laughed even in the middle of nowhere. He smiled to himself. She reminded him of how his daughter used to giggle at the simplest things. A bird outside the window, a broken toy that he would fix. But now, when he coughed, blood touched his lips. He wiped it away before Alara could see. He knew the radiation from the station explosion was spreading inside him. He could feel it in the way his bones ached, in the slow drag of each breath. But he said nothing. She'd already lost too much in her short life. He wouldn't let her lose again. "Daniel," she said suddenly, turning from the window. "Do humans get tired of running?" He smiled weakly. "Sometimes. But humans keep running anyway. That's what we're good at. Even when it hurts?" He hesitated. "Especially when it hurts." She stared at him for a long time, her gaze soft. "You're lying again," she whispered. He chuckled. "How'd you know?" "Your eyes. They go quiet when you lie." He looked away. "Then I'll have to practice more." They found refuge on a quiet mining moon, a forgotten outpost deep within the asteroid belt. The place was deserted except for a few scavengers who traded scrap for rations. Daniel bartered their shuttle's spare parts for food and a small generator. They set up a shelter inside an old hangar, its roof half broken but safe from the storms outside. Days turned into weeks. Together they fixed old machines, scavenged wiring, and built a small power grid. Daniel taught Alara how to weld, how to calibrate fuses, how to listen to the hum of an engine to know if it was sick. She learned fast, faster than he expected. Sometimes when he was too weak to move, she worked alone. He'd watch her from the corner of his bed, pride glowing faintly through the pain. One evening, Alara brought him a small metallic flower she'd built from old engine scraps. Its petals shimmered softly when powered on. "For you," she said, smiling. "It doesn't fix anything, but it looks nice." Daniel laughed softly. "You're learning the most important rule of engineering, kid. If it's beautiful, it's working." Her smile faded when he coughed again, harder this time. "You're sick," she said quietly. He tried to wave it off. "Just a bad circuit inside me." "No," she said firmly. "You're dying." The words froze the air between them. He didn't answer. For a long time he just stared at her, this little alien girl who saw more truth than most adults. Finally he said softly, "Everyone dies someday." "But not now," she whispered. "Not you." He forced a weak smile. "Hey, you said humans don't stop running, remember?" That night, while he slept, Alara sat by the dying campfire thinking. She remembered every kind thing he'd done, how he saved her, how he smiled even when hurt, how he called her daughter without fear. She realized something then, that she couldn't just watch him fade away. The next morning, Daniel woke to find her gone. Panic surged through him. He tried to stand, his body trembling, and stumbled toward the open hangar door. Outside, footprints led toward the mining trail that headed back to the main colony base. "Alara!" he shouted, voice cracking. "Where are you?" No answer. Only the distant hum of wind over the rocks. He leaned against a wall, breathing heavily, the sickness clawing at his chest. He realized what she'd done. She was going back to the authorities to beg for help. Hours later, his radio crackled. A weak voice came through, her voice. "Daniel, I'm sorry. I had to. They said they can save you, but I have to go with them." He sank to the ground, clutching the transmitter. "Alara, don't." "They'll take you away." Her voice trembled. "It's okay. You fixed me. Now it's my turn to fix you." Then the signal went silent. Daniel stared at the horizon, the faint lights of ships descending in the distance. His chest hurt, not from sickness, but from something deeper. She was walking into the lion's den alone for him. He whispered, voice rough. "You stubborn little mechanic. You're just like me." Outside, the mining moon's sky burned orange as ships landed. The chase had ended. But the real story, the one about love stronger than any law, was only beginning and far away. As Alara stepped into the custody of human officials, she held one thought in her heart, a promise. She would not stop until Daniel was free again. The courtroom floated high above the capital city of New Terra, a shining glass dome suspended in the clouds. Below it, thousands gathered, humans, aliens, diplomats, journalists, all waiting for the trial of Daniel Cross, the human engineer who broke interspecies law for love. Inside, the air was heavy with judgment. The council sat in a half circle, their robes of blue and silver glowing faintly in the artificial light. At the center stood Daniel, thin, pale, and weak, his wrists bound with energy cuffs. The radiation had drained him, but his eyes still carried the same quiet fire. He wasn't afraid of punishment. He was afraid for her. The doors opened suddenly, and every head turned. A small figure stepped into the light. Alara. Her silver eyes gleamed beneath her hood. The guards tried to stop her, but she held up a glowing document. "By galactic code, I have the right to testify," she said, voice steady. The council leader frowned. "You are a child and a Cathari. You have no standing in a human court." She took a deep breath. "Then make this the first day that changes." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. "Ilara," he whispered. She walked to the center, standing just beside him. For a moment, she didn't look at the judges. She looked at him. His face was tired, but when he smiled, she saw the same man who once gave her a wrench and said, "You earned it." Ilara turned to the council. "You call me property. You call him a criminal. But everything I am, the reason I'm alive, is because he refused to treat me like a number." One of the council members sneered. "He violated Article 9, the Interspecies Guardian Code. His signature was illegal." She stepped closer, her voice rising. "Then maybe your laws are broken. He didn't sign to gain power. He signed to give me a home. You build starships that cross galaxies, but you still can't understand what a family means?" The silence was deep, heavy enough to make even the machines pause. Ilara placed the glowing document, the same paper Daniel had signed, on the table before them. It shimmered in soft gold light. "You say this signature is invalid, but your own scanners confirmed it." Bond confirmed. "That means the code recognized us as family, not because of species, but because of truth." The room filled with whispers. Some humans looked away in shame. Others stared at her in awe. The lead judge stood slowly. "Child, emotions do not change law." Ilara met his gaze without fear. "Then maybe law should learn from emotions. Because what's the point of all your order if it punishes kindness?" She turned toward the audience and thousands of faces watching through the glass. Her voice grew softer but stronger. "He saved me when no one else would. He taught me to fix machines, to listen to the stars, to believe that love isn't about the shape of your skin. You can call him a criminal. But I call him Dad." The words struck like lightning. The crowd gasped. Even the council members froze. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. For years, he had buried his emotions deep under metal and work. But hearing her say that word, Dad, tore the last wall down inside him. The judge's hand trembled slightly as he adjusted his collar. "This testimony will be reviewed." Ilara stepped forward. "No, you'll listen now." She placed her hand over the glowing paper. The adoption code shimmered again, displaying Daniel's signature beside hers. The system, ancient and unchangeable, spoke aloud. "Verified parental bond, human guardian Daniel Cross, Cathari dependent, Ilara." The judges stared, speechless. It wasn't supposed to happen. The system was neutral. It followed only truth. Ilara looked at them one last time. "You don't have to accept me." But the galaxy already did. Outside, through the transparent dome, people began to cheer. Softly at first, then louder. Humans and aliens together. The sound filled the sky. Daniel collapsed to his knees, overwhelmed. Ilara rushed to him, wrapping her arms around him. He whispered, voice trembling, "You shouldn't have done this. They'll turn on you." She smiled through her tears. "You said humans keep running even when it hurts. So I ran here, for you." The lead judge finally spoke, his voice quieter now. "Daniel Cross. Charges dismissed. The Galactic Court recognizes the bond under humanitarian clause. The case is closed." The energy cuffs around Daniel's wrists flickered and vanished. The crowd erupted into applause. Cameras flashed. Somewhere deep in the galaxy, millions would see the image. A human and an alien child standing together under the light of a new law. As they walked out of the courtroom, the sun broke through the clouds. Daniel looked down at her. "You changed everything, kid." She grinned. "No, you did. I just fixed what you started." He laughed weakly, then coughed, and his body still fragile. She supported him. guiding him toward the waiting med team. "Don't worry," she said softly. "They'll heal you now. You're famous." "Famous, huh?" he muttered. "Never thought I'd make the news for being a dad." She laughed, and for the first time in both their lives it wasn't lonely. Months later, the universe changed quietly. The Human Cathari Treaty was rewritten, inspired by one case, the adoption of Alara. Daniel recovered slowly, and together they built a workshop on New Terra's edge. He fixed ships. She designed them, and on the door, painted in big bold letters, were 3 words: Family Repair Shop. Travelers came from across the stars to see them, the mechanic and his alien daughter. But to them it was never about fame or laws or history. It was about a promise that crossed worlds. Ilara often looked up at the stars, remembering the cold bench where her story began. "You found me when no one else would," she whispered. Daniel smiled beside her, grease still on his hands. "Nah, kid. You fixed me first." And as night fell over the new world, 2 souls, one human, one alien, sat beneath the same sky, no longer waiting for family, because they had already built one.